Hi everyone, welcome to another series. We'll just be solving past questions from the land question and answer radiographic examination textbook, and I just picked out questions relating to patient transfer because that was the topic we treated, or that was the short video I posted 2 days ago. So let's dive deep into it. The first question is from this illustration, select the correct body mechanism. And we check all of them. First and foremost, I want you to understand that there are rules to, or there are process or procedures to lifting everything, which is similar to lifting a patient. The first is that as much as possible, the radiographer or the person lifting needs to be stable. So for stability, the feet is separated in few centimeters to just make sure that they are well stable. Then the center of gravity, which is the pelvis, is centered. So you don't want it to be rotated 5, 10, or any degree. You just want it to be as straight and as center as possible. This both um, these both things just makes the radiographer of the person lifting those things very stable. Then the knee bent and the back straight. So take note of the knee bent and the back straight, right? So with this just few things, let's see which one do you think is best. If you check the first person lifting the box, the back is bent and the waist is also bent. Right. That is the wrong way of lifting the patient. Look at the second person. That seemed like the best, the most accurate because the feet are a little bit separated for stability, the knee bent, the back straight, and the person is carrying the item closer to the body. So that's correct. Then let's look at the third one. If you see the third one, some people they ensure stability by taking one leg forward, although not too much separation, but one leg forward and one leg behind, right? And if you see the back is straight, right, and the individual is carrying the box down. So that also seemed very correct. At least those two are like the most correct we've analyzed so far. Then for the last person, look at how the person is carrying. The person is like lifting the box, and the back, the waist is bent, the knee is straight, right? So this is not even the knee is not supposed to be straight, the knee is supposed to be bent, right? And the back is not supposed to be bent. So this makes two and three the best option. That's B and C. B and C, they're the correct. Two and three is the correct option. That's C. Now let's move to the next. So when assessing a patient onto an X-ray table, where the patient has one strong side and one weak side, what should the radiographer do? Now, first and foremost, it is encouraged from what we've been taught in school or what we are being taught in classes that when you're lifting or even in practice when you're lifting a patient, first or you are doing anything to a patient, if you want to maybe undress the patient, attach anything, add anything, you start with the stronger side. Because if you start with the weaker side, the patient at that moment is experiencing might be experiencing pain at that side. You start with the place that is most discomforting or not comfortable for the patient. It makes the whole process or the procedure very stressful for both you and the patient. So to get the patient's confidence, right? You start with the strong parts, right? And that is what you start with, either in lifting the patient, in dressing for the patient. If you want to undress for the patient, and it's like a shirt or a gown, you could remove from the stronger side that the patient will feel less pain, right? Preparing the patient for the most painful part. So that's why we see in our options we say start with the weaker side closer to the table. Nope. From what I've explained, start with a stronger side closer to the table. Yes, from what I've explained, stronger side closer to the table. If you can position the stronger side on the table, it's easier for you to just pull. I say pull, just push the patient gently on the couch. Do you get? So always use a two-person lift. Nah. We've advised that, and then to go further, it depends on the size of the patient, but two might be insufficient to safely carry this patient. Then lift the patient carefully onto the table. Lift. Can you lift alone? No. So the best answer is start with the stronger side closer to the table. That's the side you and whoever is helping you to can safely put that side first, then gaining the confidence and preparing the patient for the other side. So the patient, even if the patient is feeling so much pain, they can adopt any position or prepare their mind, right, to accommodate for the weaker side. Yes, we got the start with the stronger side closer to the table. Now moving on, let's check again. It says regard. to assisting a patient from a wheelchair to an X-ray table, what do you do? So when a patient comes into the room on a wheelchair, there are certain things you need to do. First and foremost, you lock the wheels. If it's a stretcher, you lock the stretcher because you don't want it to turn by when you are carrying the patient falls off or trips off. So you lock it first. After locking it, the footrest you close them and take them up forward. If I'm trying to picture a wheelchair now, and if you have been in practice, you should be able to picture a wheelchair. Then the wheelchair is angled at 45 degrees to allow for any form of maneuver where you are carrying or you're transferring the patient to the x-ray table. So that's why we go for the wheelchair should be angled 45 degrees to the x-ray table. And I won't go for the footrest should not be folded downward. If you're folding it downward, that means you are making a platform for the patient to step on. And the patient is that is only acceptable when the patient is seated, right? But if the patient is standing, the patient can easily trip off if the stuff is down because the patient is going to put their legs down. So yeah, so that's what Gary correct. Wheelchair should be angled 45 degrees to the X-ray table. Correct. So now the next one. To reduce the back strain that can result from moving heavy objects, what should the radiographer do? So let's go back again to just re-emphasize what we said. Let's get the rule again. The radiographer must be as stable as possible with the 2 feet separated. Their waist must be centered, or their pelvis, sorry, must be centered at the level of at the center of gravity for stability. The knee should be slightly bent and flexed or bent. Then the back should be as straight as possible, should be straight, right? So that's stands. Then, in addition, that will not answer our question is when you are lifting an object, right? You lift the object closer to the body, not away. Because if you're lifting away, you are enforcing so much. You are using your shoulders, you are applying so much force, and you are putting so much strain on your back. That's why if you see our first question, our first answer, see this picture, you can see that for the second one that we said was correct, that is number two, the box was closer to the guy, right? If you see the other one closer, so if you see that the one that is closer, the one that is holding that box closer to his hand, it's not applying any pressure, so much pressure on his shoulder or his back compared to the guy in number four. Do you understand? So that's why it's essential that first hold the object close to the body. So that means A is wrong. Then bend at the waist. Now in lifting, we already told you that don't bend at the waist. It's the wrong position in carrying or lifting an heavy object. Pull the object if you are pulling the object like the picture I showed you earlier, you're applying strength. So the best thing and what is mostly done is if you have a very big object and you are left with the option of either pulling or pushing it, the best that you push the heavy or weighty object. So that's why I'll go for push. Now to the last question. Yeah, we got it. Push. The last question: a radiographer needs to transfer a helpless patient from a stretcher to the pediatric table. Which of the following is the safest and most appropriate method? We actually talked about that already in the last video we did, which you can go back to check. And it is first they said, A, the radiographer lifts the patient alone using proper body mechanism. No, no, no. We spoke about when lifting a very heavy patient, you use about 4 to 6 personnel, right? They are the only one that can help you. If it's a child, you can use about 3 to 4, but if it's an adult, use about 4 to 6, depending on the weight and the size of the patient. And if the patient is very heavy, you use mechanical lift, but you still need few people around just in case of any eventuality that might occur. So you don't do it first, you don't do it alone. You don't do it alone. Yeah. Two radiographers lift the patient. No, two radiographers, they are not enough to lift an adult. Instead, if those two radiographers, they would not be able to successfully lift the patient. So the best is to have about 4 to 6 people on ground. It might not only necessarily be the only radiographers, might be radiographers, for assistants, radiographers assistants, nurses, anybody around in the room that can help, right, just to prevent your patient from falling or tripping. Yeah, so that's what makes me go for option C. Correct. Thank you for watching. And do like, share, subscribe for more educative content and very simplified. See you in my next video.